We're back. Today, we are going to be talking a bit more about non-scale ways to track your fat loss. When all of this started, we said that we were going to be using different measures, and I feel like a lot of it then went to just the weight and the training. Non-scale ways that you can track your fat loss progress. Losing weight or getting healthy or everything isn't just about the necessary all over weight that you're losing, but it's more important to focus on fat loss because that is kind of what dictates your metabolic rate and health of everything. There are 3 measures that I've been using, visual measures, so nothing related to the scale, that I've been using that I don't think a lot of people talk about or don't consider a way to track your progress. These are kind of the top 3 that I don't feel are talked about, and they're kind of not necessarily ignored, but almost some people might find it like shameful. And those 3 are cellulite, stretch marks, and loose skin. We're getting started with cellulite as probably one of the ones that I have noticed the most as I've been in this cut phase of what I'm trying to do. Cellulite is just the appearance of dimply skin or so because of the fat deposits in your subcutaneous. The subcutaneous fat deposits, and all that means is right underneath the skin but above the muscle. How this can be measured is simply seeing if you're getting more of it. So if you start out with maybe not a lot, but you're in an active fat loss phase, you might see a lot more starting to appear, and it's not always just, in one spot. It kind of just it spreads. Majority of my cellulite is on my legs because that's where I hold a lot of my fat deposits, but I know that it does exist in other parts of my body. It's just more visible on my legs. And how I've been tracking it is I used to have, 1 or 2 dimples in a specific spot, and as I've been losing the weight, losing the fat, more and more dimples are starting to come hang out, and that is, instead of being ashamed of that, like I would have in the past. Story time, I guess. When I was in college, I started actively trying to gain strength and lose weight, but I quit because I started getting more cellulite, and I quit because I thought that that was a bad thing, and I thought that what I was doing was causing it, and in reality, I was losing fat. It's just, you can't spot burn fat to a degree. Your body is just going to take energy storage from wherever it wants. You can't just work out your legs a lot and expect the fat to go away from your legs. That's not how it works. You will start to see more cellulite in just kind of everywhere. And that's kind of how I started not only getting excited when I start seeing more cellulite appearing, using that as a progress measure, because if more cellulite's appearing, that basically means more fat deposits are being used up by my body as energy. So I am losing fat based off of where the cellulite is, but that's not necessarily for everyone. There are a few studies, and I will link them below, that some people that just doesn't happen because once again, it's dependent on how your body stores fat and how your body uses the fat, and it is somewhat genetic to a degree. So if you're in a fat loss phase, you might not see cellulite appearance at all. If you are in a fat loss phase, you might see a lot of cellulite start, and the only way to get rid of the cellulite look is to lose fat and build muscle. That's one measure that I've used, and I do get excited about it. I practice my posing and had one, and then I had more startup, and every time I see more, I get excited, and I tell my husband, hey, more of them are coming to the party, join their friend. And I think that's given me more body confidence as well, instead of being like, oh, I'm getting more cellulite, oh, hide everything. I'm actually proud of it now because I can visually see that my hard work is paying off. Number 2. Stretch marks. I got stretch marks when I went through puberty. Most women, most men, pretty much everyone will get a stretch mark, depending on their growths. I got mine right before puberty because I put on a lot of weight. Women can get them through pregnancy. You can see bodybuilders get them because their muscles grow so quickly. They cause stretch marks, and all the stretch marks are is when you grow faster than your skin. So as you're growing, it rips the skin. And anytime you have a rip in your skin, it can create a scar. And so these stretch marks are basically growth scars. They are, once again, genetic. It is also dependent on how hydrated you are and how moisturized your skin is. Some people get them worse than others. I have some on my hips that aren't very noticeable because they're just little white lines. So it wasn't a big rip in my skin when, I gained weight. It's just a little bit. So that's why they stayed very not noticeable. But I do have some on my inner thighs that when I am heavy, when I am bigger, they appear as purple or red. But then as I shrink down, they also start to go white because they're not having to be stretched. Ones on my inner thighs are my worst ones, most noticeable ones. And they are the appearance of them is starting to go down. So whereas they would be like this long and red, purple, really noticeable, now they're this big, and I really am the only one noticing them. I think at this point, I asked my husband, I was practicing posing and I noticed and I said, "Babe, look, what do you notice?" And he had no idea what I was talking about. That's a measure for me, and I think proof that people really don't notice blemishes or anything as much as you do, unless they are looking for it. And if someone is looking to notice something, you have to kind of, what are your motives behind that? And most of the time it's going to be to try to drag you down. So flip that around. If you're losing weight and you have stretch marks and you start to notice them going away, that's a great marker to show that your progress is happening, especially when the number on that scale isn't moving. That's one thing I'm really liking, is how they are kind of disappearing. I know I have them. It's not that I'm ashamed to have them. It's that my body isn't having to rip itself because of the weight that I'm carrying around. It's pretty well known that they won't go away. It's just the appearance of them will no longer be, super noticeable. They will always be there. They are a scar. There is no way to get rid of them unless, you go through plastic surgery to have that part of your skin removed. It is what it is, and, embrace it and kind of use it as that measure and as that motivation to let you know that you're working toward whatever goal that you're working toward. In my case, the fat loss case. Measure number 3. And this one is, I think, more noticeable if you start out a bit bigger. Still happen depending on how quickly you do lose the weight, and that is loose skin. So if you're losing weight and you get a whoosh where you just all of a sudden, like what I had in July or August, but I did have some loose skin on my stomach because a lot of the fat I did lose came off my stomach. I would say it was a little aggravating because I still wasn't to the point where I was accepting of that. You have to work with what you have and look at stuff in positive ways, especially if you're making changes to your life. And having loose skin is a sign of weight loss. It truly is. My loose skin, it is tightening back up a little slower. I always wish it would be faster, but it is tightening up in the sense that I'm staying hydrated. I am staying at the weight. I'm not losing weight and then gaining it back, because that is also one way that loose skin just won't dissipate. And so that is a measure is, you have loose skin right now, but that's okay because you lost fat in that area. So now your skin just has to adapt to the new situation that it's in. And you can use skin tightening creams, staying hydrated. Your micro macronutrients are a big factor, and so is, once again, weight training. So I think being able to look at how my body is shifting and comparing it to what I am doing actively has really helped to shift my mindset around what I was basically raised as to see as a negative and to hide away from it. These are some non-scale ways to measure it that, yes, they might not be 100%, but it at least gives you the frame of reference that you are making changes and those changes are working. Measuring body fat is incredibly hard. That's why you have to have multiple measures unless you can afford to go and get the true scans. I'm not talking about like calipers, because unless you're really trained in how to use calipers, you're going to be wildly off. I'm not talking about, our scale that uses the magnetic or a handheld thing or an in-body or anything like that. Those can be 5 to 10% off either way. So they're not the best usage of actual percentage, if you're consistently using that, at least it is going to measure if you're in an upward trend or a lower trend, but you have to be using the exact same thing every day. We use our scale, so even though, you know, the scale says according to our scale, it says I'm 21% body fat, that might not necessarily be true. It could be, you know, if I actually was to go and get it professionally done, either through a DEXA scan or a dunk tank, which the dunk tank is one of the most accurate ones, but it is also the hardest one because you have to hold your breath. And they're very hard to find. So I could actually possibly be 18, or I could be 24. That is why I have been using way more than just the scale. However, you know, if you're going to take measurements such as, you know, measuring the inches with a measuring tape, you're looking at your clothes, you're taking progress photos, strength in the gym is getting better, how are you feeling, you know, the appearance of just your physical appearance, like I just mentioned, my top 3 of trying to measure that fat loss rather than just overall weight loss. At the end of the day, how you're feeling is probably going to be the biggest indicator, and how you're feeling about your body. Decide on the factors that you want to use to measure your progress before it gets to where you become all consumed with just one measure. Like, a lot of people always fall back on the scale because it is the easiest measure, but it's not always the best measure. Yeah, thanks for watching. If you're not subscribed, do subscribe. I'm the one that sees the analytics, and I know a lot of you are watching, but a lot of you aren't subscribed. So do subscribe so that anytime we do post, because we post about 2 to 3 times a week, you will be, it'll appear in your little subscription home thing on your account. And yeah, that is all. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.